Hi there. We're here today with 5 candidates for the Green Party, female candidates talking about the Me Too movement and representation of female candidates in government and also in business, the underrepresentation of females in leading positions. Today we have 5 great female leaders and activists. First, I want to introduce Rachel Bernanke. Rachel,
Brunke.
I'm sorry?
Brunke.
Oh, Brunke. I'm sorry, Rachel. Rachel Brunke, who's running for California Assembly District 70. Rachel, you want to talk to us about why you chose to run and why you chose to run for the Green Party?
Okay, well, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Michael, for continuing your great interviews that you've done with us, a lot of us in the Green Party throughout this whole 2018 race. I've been a Green Party member since 1992. I went through the Reagan years and the first George Bush, senior years, and when I realized that we were going to come out of those years without having any kind of truth and truth accounting of what those years meant for our country and our planet and our psychology and the extreme belligerence that came out of those years and militarism, then I realized I just had to change parties. So I looked at the 10 key values of the Green Party, and I've been with it ever since. I've been an activist, as you say, for a long, long time, and I guess, I literally, it's because I went and I met a lot of you in November up in Ventura, and a lot of people were running, and I had been thinking about running, just realizing that my politics had never been on any platform I'd ever seen, and I was tired of it, and I was realizing, I think I might be the person that I've been waiting for, so so when I decided to run for assembly, I wasn't quite sure because the assembly in California is one representative for every 485,000 people. So 500,000 people, that's ridiculous. No one knows, no one cares, totally unconnected to all of that for the most part. But the word assembly is actually one of my favorite words in the Constitution. That's what we're doing here right now. We're all getting together as people, talking about what we think we need to see in the world and getting together to redress our grievances. So that's a right and a duty that we have in our Constitution that's really been smashed while the Second Amendment and all things violent, which is like definitely not feminist, but all things violent, including the Second Amendment, get carte blanche in our society. The First Amendment and the right to assemble and to talk about how we're going to organize human society, we're apparently not allowed to do that in any real sense of the word. So I'm here to take power. I'm here to help create the People's Assembly, and so that's why I'm running. And I've been using my personal authentic voice throughout this campaign. So I love that the Green Party allows me to do that also. Within the boundaries of the 10 key values that we all share.
Excellent. So I'm going to introduce everybody, but does anybody have comments to what you said?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for what you said was amazing, and thank you for running. I consider
it's been fun. I hope it's been fun for all of us up and down the state. It's cool to know we're all here.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And how about we go to Laura? Laura, you're running for U.S. representative in District 13. You're the spokesperson for the Green Party in California, and you've run for office before. Can you tell us why you chose to run this time around as well?
Well, when I've run before, it was to follow the money. And I ran for state controller in California, and then I ran for governor in 2010, right after the meltdown. And it was also follow the money, and also so that there are solutions. That would be at the top of my website. There are solutions. And the reason that I'm running is that the two-party system is not going to come up with those solutions for the rest of us. The person that I'm running against is Barbara Lee. And she is the congressperson of the most progressive district, probably in the entire country. It has Berkeley and Oakland in it. And she is running unopposed on the primary ballot. So in June, there's nobody that's on the ballot against her. And so someone who was writing up the Green Party of Alameda County, which is where I am, I live in Oakland, does a green voter guide. I'll just put this right up here. And people can Google it, just green voter guide. You'll probably get right to it. If you need to, you could add Alameda County. But it has a voter card on the website and, you know, on the publication on the back. And the idea was, can we run somebody as a write-in candidate against Barbara Lee with the possibility that of being on the November ballot? Because with the top two primary, the top two vote getters will be on the November ballot, even if there's just one person in June. And so the second person, the write-in candidate that gets the most votes will be on the ballot. Now, so what I'm talking to a lot of Democrats. I went to a Wellstone Democratic Club and said, I believe that you could say this. Let's say you love Barbara Lee. I love you, Barbara Lee. I'm writing in Laura Wells as the congressperson, and I'm checking the box, you know, connecting the arrow to the right, because we want you to know we are here. They have plenty of pressure in Congress and all in the city halls and in the state legislatures, plenty of pressure from the billionaires and their corporations. What they need to know is that we are here, and one of the best ways to do that is to vote for a green, whether we write in a green or whether we connect the arrow on the ballot because the person's already on there. The worst thing that could happen if everybody does that is that a green would get elected. So I mean, that's hardly a downside. So everybody, you know, that feels that they have the progressive values of social justice, economic justice, environmental justice, as well as a real vibrant grassroots democracy, should vote green right in. So my thing, my particular campaign, I have this little card that has my face on one side, and on the other side it shows the ballot. There's Barbara Lee all by herself, and write in Laura Wells and connect to the arrow on the right. And so it's been it's a wonderful challenge. And I know later we'll talk about women running. We definitely need women, but we need Green Party women running. So I'm really glad to see all those faces in front of me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. And Sadie, how about just so you know you're on mute. Okay, there you go. You're running for California Assembly District 4, and also you're the campaign manager for Josh Jones for governor.
Yes, I'm a woman in many hats.
Yes, can you tell us how you're doing this double duty and why you chose to run in the Assembly District?
Sure. Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, like Laura, I'm up against a candidate who is the only candidate on the ballot. The candidate in my case is a woman named Cecilia Aguiar Curry, and she's a corporate Democrat who took a whole bunch of oil money and is just, you know, she's out there for her people, and her people are not my people, and they're not the people. My people are the ordinary folks. There's 6 counties in my assembly district, and just a number of the issues that come up. The candidate I'm running against endorsed a district attorney candidate who has been in place for 16 years and has overseen Yolo County, the county I live in. Yeah, you can see it, Yolo County. There's the district attorney race is a big race right now. And basically the guy who should hopefully be on the way out, he's got our jury trials up so that in Yolo County, there are more than double the amount of jury trials per capita of any county in California, more than double than any other one, including Kern County. So I mean, that just gives you a little feel for that. There's a whole wide range of issues why we need someone who's a real lefty progressive, who's actually going to stand up for people. We got a lot of farm workers in this area. We need someone who's going to advocate for them, and it ain't going to be her. And, you know, the other two write-in candidates, a libertarian man and a Republican man. So I'm the choice for farm workers. And it's important that there be a choice for farm workers, because we're in the heart of agricultural California. And if there was actually a group of farm workers who were stuck in the evacuation zone in Napa County while they were evacuating because of the fire, these farm workers were told, you have to stay here in the evacuation zone and keep picking the grapes. Would you believe it?
God.
And Cecilia Aguilar Curry, who I'm running against, was informed of this, and she did nothing about it, nothing at all. There's basically, she's a senior Democratic Party person, and there's this culture of, well, if I help these people, what are you going to give me? And quite frankly, what we gave you was our vote, and that should be enough. And so if you're not going to do it, you're not getting our vote again next time. And like, so in a nutshell, I did not want to see her unopposed. That's why I ran. Yes, I am also incredibly busy with the governor campaign that I'm the campaign manager for. So I'm kind of doing double duty here, and I'm tired, but I'm also young, and there is so much work that needs to be done that every day, you know, it's one more day. You just get up, you dust yourself off, and you just keep going, because honestly, at least I'm not out picking fruit in the hot sun.
Right. So to be clear, with Laura Wells's campaign and with Sadie's campaign, they're write-in candidates against people who are running unopposed. So in California's top two system, the top write-in candidate is going to go on to the general election, and we have two very good candidates there to represent the Green Party, and we have a good chance on getting them into the general election.
I have a question.
Thank you guys for running. Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Could you ask the question to Laura, or I guess I can.
Yeah.
I was under the impression if a candidate got 50.1% of the vote, that they would automatically win the position and not go to a runoff in November.
I think that's true sometimes at the local level,
Okay.
but it's not in the top two for the state and federal offices.
Okay.
Two people will be on the November ballot.
Okay.
But I think, you know, again, it's like sometimes if for a mayor, if they get 50.1%, then they don't bother with a runoff. But if they don't, then they'll have the top two possibly in a runoff. But that's local.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know where I got that from.
Probably somebody was thinking of the local. You know,
Okay.
the elections, that's one of the strategies, I think, is to make the election process so confusing
For
in
real.
so many ways that, you know, highly educated and totally, you know, whatever, nobody can figure it out.
It's a puzzle. It's
Yeah.
a puzzle.
On the other hand, that means we can,
Capitalist elections are very confusing.
Deliberately.
yeah.
Deliberately.
On the other hand, we can make it work for us then sometimes to an extent. It's
Yeah.
really not designed to work for us. Let's be clear about that.
Right, but let's use the opportunities like this.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
This
not
is a
only that, it's
fantastic
financially prohibitive as well, right?
It's not as expensive to run a write-in candidate
Right.
as a write-in candidate.
Right. Okay. How about we go to Carol? Carol, you're running in Assembly District 42 for California Assembly. Can you go ahead and tell us about your candidacy and why you chose to run?
Okay, well, I hope you can see my little banner in the back here, Carol for AD 42. And that the reason why I decided to run was when the Speaker of the Assembly, a Democrat, Anthony Rendon, decided to shelve the single-payer bill, SB 562, and the Rules Committee, and not allowed onto the floor to be amended and to be voted upon. And then, subsequent to that, he decided to have a special committee, designed to basically just obfuscate the whole issue. I decided that, let me just back up for a second. Prior to that, I was kind of feeling like, after the Trump regime took over in Washington, and then we had all of these, every single branch of government at the federal level taken over by the ultra right wing, I was thinking that we were somewhat buffered here in California, that we didn't have, the same kind of situation. But then once that happened, I mean, I realized we really have got to get some Greens in office, and we've got to get some women in office. Because, these corporate Democrats, they're selling out, not just on the federal level, but on the state level as well. And the only way that we're ever going to have any kind of representation for we the people is if third-party people like the Greens and Peace and Freedom and those kind of people get into office, because we're the only ones that care about actual people, that have some actual values, and that don't want to serve corporate interests, which seems to be the goal more and more here on the state level. It's rather alarming, the extent to which that seems to be happening more and more. So that was my motivation. And I'm running in a district that is extremely right-wing. It's portions of the two largest counties, San Bernardino and Riverside. It's a huge district. The incumbent is a Republican, Chad Mays, and what's interesting about that is he's actually being challenged by a couple of other Republicans who are even more to the right of him, and in fact, I believe the California Republican Party endorsed one of these people, and I believe I think it's Kochik, but because they got angry at him because he voted for the cap and trade bill. And, they're so anti-environmental, the Republicans, and they're so uninformed that they actually think that's, a pro-environmental stance, which those of us that are real environmentalists know that's BS, that, cap and trade is essentially just a license to pollute. But they don't seem to realize that. So they're running a couple of Republicans against him that are even more to the right. So he actually wants to bring the Republican Party a little to the left. So it's an interesting situation. There were 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats and me running. Now there's 2 of the Democrats have dropped out. There's 1 Democrat, 3 Republicans and me. So it's highly unlikely, kind of the snowball's chance in hell kind of springs to mind that I'll be in the top 2. But mainly what I'm campaigning on is to get out the idea that people actually have a third choice. I've been talking to people and telling them, I'm running to give people an actual third choice for a change, and that the Green Party is here because we don't take any money from corporations, Wall Street, or billionaires like the Koch brothers. Therefore, we're free to represent real people like them, not corporate interests. And people, interestingly enough, people are really quite receptive to that, I find, even in this rather right-wing district when I get out and talk to people. It's been very difficult finding venues, to speak to people because, there isn't a lot available here, and our Green Party is extremely tiny, and most of the people aren't really active. So but I've just been going out to places like Walmarts and, and that has worked pretty well, actually talking to people there. So I'm planning on going to some of the other local events here over the weekend and hopefully drumming up a little more support. So anyway, I'm happy to be here with all of you wonderful women running in the Green Party. It's really great to look up and see all of you and think that we're all in the same party, and and to be around some Greens, because it's so rare for me where I am. So anyway,
Thanks for fighting the good fight, Carol.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for real.
And I'll tell you, Carol, I think from my perspective, I think you're giving people a second choice, because I think the other two
Yeah.
parties are really just one party with two
Yeah.
different names, and
Mhm.
certainly appreciate you running and representing us.
Yes.
Okay, how about you, Bridget? You're in Assembly District 22 here in California. Can you give us or tell us why you chose to run?
Apologize for my voice. I'm in San Mateo County, and I'm so proud to be here with all of you. And thank you so much, Mike. The media has completely abandoned their job as truth tellers, and I'm so glad that you're in there doing it. So thank you. San Mateo, I got into politics for the same reason everybody else did, just watching our democracy crumble before us. The people who are supposed to be representing us do things that actually further oppress us rather than set us free. So, is there an echo?
Yeah, you're getting an echo. I think it's because you're. I don't know if are you listening on one device and.
No, my phone I turned off. Am I still doing it?
No, you're not. You
No.
don't have an echo any longer.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
don't hear it now.
Okay. Well, I'm very proud to be on this panel. I'm very proud to be counted among these women because, like you said, Mike, it's not really like a third choice anymore. It's like in every account, you're the only liberal, basically, the only truly liberal, what used to be described as a liberal, which is somebody who is for the people rather than for necessarily business. And I turned into the Green Party once. I was peace and freedom for a long time. I switched to be a Democrat for Bernie Sanders. And then the day after the Democratic convention, I switched to Green and I went to the next convention. And that's when I found out that, wow, this is why the Green Party doesn't get any press in the media. This is why I have only gotten one interview from mainstream media, whereas my friend, I talked him into running because there was nobody opposing the guy. And he's a Democrat. He gets 5 calls a day, he tells me, for interviews, and I have had only one. So it just shows you that the mainstream media is blocking Green Party candidates, obliterating them from the public view, which is an outrage, really. And especially considering the legitimacy of the Green Party at this point. If Bernie Sanders had taken the invitation to run as president on the Green Party, I don't think anybody will argue with the fact that he absolutely would have won. You know what I mean? He would have landslide victoried. So it's really just a kind of a conspiracy to keep the fight between two evils. And basically, they're all working for themselves. They're a bunch of crooks. So, as a mother and as a woman, I'm absolutely appalled that they take our money in the form of taxes. They use that money to give themselves extremely comfortable lifestyles, and then they will not do their job that they're supposed to do, which is protect our safety and provide for our safety and happiness. right? In the Constitution or in the Declaration of Independence. That's why the government is formed, to provide for our safety and happiness. And they act as if we are a nuisance and a block to progress. And I look forward to whatever happens during this election. If the top two, to be honest with you, I'm running against somebody who's going on his 4th term. He's the epitome of a demon rat. He knows about the sexual misconduct in the sheriff's department and has done nothing about it. I am green. There is a Republican woman running and him. So I hope it's the top two, because I think I stand a pretty good chance since I'm the only real liberal. Other than that, I'm a mom and I'm a woman and I'm fucking pissed.
Woo.
Excellent. Well,
You're
thank
paying
you for running.
attention. You're not
Okay,
angry, you're not paying attention.
That's right.
So this is an open forum, so we're all, open to just, ask questions as well as kind of chime in. So let's talk about the importance of women running in the backdrop of the Trump presidency, and just kind of his disregard for everybody who's not like him, let's say. Does anybody want to talk about the Trump presidency and his attitude towards women?
Well, he should be the poster board for the Me Too movement. This is the guy. He has got money and power, and he has always used it to abuse the people around him, but most specifically the women around him.
Yeah. I mean, I would say about the whole Trump presidency, really, we're also working on the backdrop of the entire 2016 election, where the two main candidates, one ran on a platform of, you have to vote for me because I'm a woman, and the other ran on a platform of, like, basically, I don't care about women at all. And so then you're like, do you make being a woman the only issue or not an issue at all? Like, is there a little bit more intersectionality that we can find here? So then those of us who supported Jill Stein, it's like, well, you're being sexist if you're not voting for Hillary. Well, actually, I'm voting for a woman.
Right.
So it's a very strange angle where in some ways I felt like there's been a push by the mainstream to co-opt my femininity and use it to their own ends. Like, there is nothing that they won't try and steal from us. And I also feel like, while we're talking about women in politics, that there's been space for women in politics, a little bit of space for a little bit of time, but there hasn't been space for is feminine in politics. Yes. And so I want to see more feminine in politics. There's women who rose to the top, and there's rumors, I don't know if they're true, but there's rumors that some of the women in Congress and in Senate, that they actually take testosterone in order to survive there. And again, I don't know if that's true, so, don't go publishing any scandals about Sadie Fulton alleged this. But I have
this is Rachel down in San Pedro. The whole system is testosterone based, and that's kind of the point. I'm looking at here at the printout of our 10 key values, and one of our key values is feminism, and it's about, like, women and gender in a way, but it's about a more feminine perspective, and which is just something men can have, of course. And I'm just a couple of miles away from Trump National Golf Course here on Palos Verdes, and so a couple of years ago, when he said his just kind of hateful things against immigrants, I organized a group. We were out there within a week. And our main point, it's cool that it's that close. We've been out there a lot. But our main point was not just what he said hatefully about immigrants, or we could say, his misogynist ways. The most important issue for me is that he's, and someone mentioned it before, is his incredible wealth. you can be a hater or a misogynist or whatever, and if you don't have power and wealth, whatever, you're just standing on a street corner spewing your nonsense. But it's the landed gentry, and by landed I mean he is now the land hoarder in chief, and that's one of my primary platform points. Is we need land reform in this country. We have too much land increasingly in too few hands. And if we're going to talk about this in terms of women's issues, it turns into a housing crisis. And, we cannot afford to and safely to house our families, our children, create community, because we're all scrambling and we're not at home enough because we have to work too hard. And these are real feminine issues. And Mike, you and I, we had an interview after the shooting after Parkland, and I think it was even before, and we talked about kind of these feminist values and the fact that women can be very empowered if their society is empowering them, and it's not hand holding us in the workplace. In my estimation, it's not treating us in any kind of delicate way, but it's empowering the things that we need. We need housing security. We need health security. Yeah. We need a clean environment. We need peace. And we're here to demand it now, because this monster in the office is so the antithesis of anything that we value as Greens and really as human beings. I forget who it was that said, she's getting a lot of traction with Republicans. Carol, I think that was you, talking about simple green values. And I think that we can really reach across the aisles and talk to a lot of people at this point who are pretty disgusted and afraid by such a hateful way of being.
Definitely. This is the time to form a purple nation rising, where red and blue together make purple. We need unity, and we need to recapture democracy so that we can argue about the details with all voices, basically. You know what I mean? It's like our democracy itself, the fact that only one voice is allowed to be heard, is absolute fascism. And once we can hopefully, which I think we're doing, which is the most remarkable thing of all things, we, just a handful of people, mostly green people, are actually recapturing our democracy by running for office. You know what I mean? And for getting involved.
And this is Rachel again. Before I forget, and to build on what you were just saying, is right after Trump was elected, I happened to be going from where I live in Southern California up to Humboldt County, and we went through, rural California, and I had a notepad in my hand with a bunch of questions after he was elected, like, what the fuck did you just do, and let him know openly who I was as a Green, and something really interesting that I saw that I want to learn more about. And those of us running for assembly, we're running in our district, but we would also be voting on statewide issues. And so really it's a statewide seat as far as I can see it. We need to understand our whole seat. But I saw in those conversations real disempowerment of women. The man would be talking, he would be kind of most aggressive. I'm not saying this all in for sure, like everyone, but it was just an interesting thought. And I thought, none of these policies that they back are good for women and good for children. So there must be a lot of oppression in red Trump country of women. And I think we can reach across and help, in that.
Great point.
Yeah, I would like to say, the Trump regime has really, they have really totally empowered the Christo-fascists who have been relentlessly pursuing, trying to stomp on women's rights, for decades upon decades. And unfortunately, he has allowed these people, they have full access into the White House. at any time, apparently. And all of the policies all of the policies that the Republican Party has been pursuing, to try to outlaw abortion and reproductive rights, and even criminalize it, and so on. I'm wondering why I'm never on that screen when I'm talking. How are we doing this, Michael? Are we putting the person in the middle that's talking, or?
Oh, no, I think you're just all staying kind of right where you are.
Oh, okay, because I keep seeing other people in the middle, but
really, it might just be the configuration of your screen. On my screen, you have 2 lines of 3 people, and you're just staying
interesting.
right where you're
Kind of
at.
like Hollywood Squares or something. Kind of like Hollywood Squares. But yeah, anyway.
We're dating ourselves.
What's that?
We're dating ourselves, Hollywood.
Yeah. It's pointless, for me to try to do that. But anyway, it's been horrifying to see the extent to which all of the narratives that they were pushing prior to this last election, that they've been pushing for many years about legitimate rape and women need to be our bodies are not our own. We've got to be controlled by these men who are in office and who are in the Supreme Court and wherever else, and ignoring issues like the Equal Rights Amendment, which nobody talks about, and is the reason why we have no rights. We still have no federal rights in the Constitution. This is why Scalia, when that case came before the Supreme Court, if you recall, several years ago, with regard to the women at Walmart bringing that suit, that class action suit, he essentially said, well, you don't have any actual rights in the federal Constitution. And he's right, because we never have gotten the Equal Rights Amendment ratified. So all of these things have been, and all of these elements that are so sexist and so misogynist have been enabled and empowered by this administration to a very alarming degree. They also have been trying to do away with Title IX. They have been trying to do away with some of the legislation that was actually helping domestic violence. I forget the name of the bill, but it was about violence against women. So, it's really a very misogynist agenda that's being pursued in a whole lot of the states as well as at the federal level. And so it's very alarming.
I wish that it were just Trump.
It's not just Trump by any means.
Decades and decades.
Oh, yes.
Trump just gives everybody more permission to be upfront about it, to be obvious about it.
Blatant.
The misogyny and the racism and the anti-immigrant and the anti. And I always do like to think that there are solutions. And one of the solutions is an example of this panel that we've got tonight. It's solidarity, and it's consciousness raising, and it's helping each other, and it's encouraging other women. I would say, in every organization, everything, there is sexism. There is the training that we have. I don't know what the difference is when we come out of the chute. I don't know what the difference is at the moment that we're born, but the training is incredibly different in terms of who's allowed and encouraged to speak out and who's not allowed and encouraged to speak out even who gets blamed. You know,
Yes.
the system, when we do something rotten, we get way slammed down, you know, whereas we have rotten actions constantly by people who were trained to be men, and it's okay, you know, and that's just plain misogynist. I remember Sarah Palin, when she ran for vice president against Obama. I think that was in 2008 when she ran with McCain. And she was saying that she was treated in a sexist way. Okay, I barely agree with anything that woman ever said except that. You know,
Yeah.
he was. And then people would say, oh, yeah. Yes. Do you know, it's across.
So was Hillary.
Yeah. I
They
mean,
all were, yeah.
Hillary, you know.
Every woman.
And so in order for us, you know, so when we run, when we speak out, when we encourage other people to run, and I'll tell you, I'm thrilled to pieces. I'm one of the long timers in the Green Party, and I'm thrilled to pieces at the newer and younger Greens that have come into the to the Green Party. Mike, you said to me that I mean, I was arrested outside of a debate just to be in the audience, arrested at a gubernatorial debate. And Mike said that he realized that the Green Party was the biggest threat. And that is why they are really trying to shut us up as much as possible. And so I think that, but we're getting stronger. Yes. We've got two more people running for two more women running for office, you know, Sadie and me, because of the write-in thing, than we had even a month ago. But we're going to organize and get more people in the chute, you know, in the pipeline, and be able to support more people and really focus on women. Look at Kshama Sawant up in Seattle. Look at Gail McLaughlin in Richmond. And what do they have in common besides the fact that they were women? Is that they run in a very collaborative way. And people say, hey, Gail, let's run Gail. Hey, let's run Kshama. And no corporate money, not a dime of corporate money, not a dime of developer money. And you mentioned that earlier. That is starting to take hold across the country. And so even going up against somebody as beloved as Barbara Lee, I mean, that was 17 years ago that she represented her district and voted against bombing Afghanistan. She had the luxury of being in the position of the only congressperson that knew pretty well she would lose her seat if she voted for that. But it still took courage. It still took courage to do that. And, you know, she did it. But the fact that they're all taking corporate money and that they're team players for a party that takes that corporate money. And I'll wrap up this little solidarity thing with, I am thrilled to pieces that we are working as Greens. Rachel, you mentioned that you were Peace and Freedom, but the Greens and the Peace and Freedom Party are working closer together than they ever did before.
Yes. I love that.
I was endorsed by Peace and Freedom, also by Gail McLaughlin. I'm thrilled about that. And we endorsed Peace and Freedom candidates. We do need to have solidarity on all fronts, whether it's female, Greens, no corporate money, and all of that, and work together. Just people is what fights money and wins.
One of my campaign slogans right now is "The party's over." I mean, I definitely, you know, I love the Green Party. Like I said, I've been in since '92. It's my party, you know, but it's got to be people just putting that label down and showing the freedom. I mean, aren't we free America? My goodness, people, get out of your little box. You were just in shackles, and, you know, slap them around a little bit and let them vote for something besides a D.
That's what I love. I was talking to some guy today. He called me up because he got my newsletter, and I said, all we have to do is not comply with what they're expecting us to do, which is not, you know, it's not that radical. It's simply voluntary. Don't volunteer to support this wretched system by voting for people that are in the wretched system, you know? Just it's a voluntary act.
Yeah.
So
well, oddly,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, to tack on to what Bridget just said, that there's more and more people who are opting out, but the way that they're opting out is by not voting at all.
That's right.
And I will freely admit, and I'm not proud of this, I didn't vote in 2012. And that's because at that point, well, I was overseas, and so just getting an absentee ballot proved too much of a hassle because neither of the two main candidates were people who I was interested in, and I didn't know what the Green Party was doing. Nobody was telling me anything. And that's not the Green Party's fault. That's the system. Anyway, Michael, you were gonna say something.
So I was just going to say, is the Green Party receptive to women more than the other two parties? Because I'm sure that the other two parties would probably say they stand up for women the same way we say that.
Oh, well, I don't think the Republicans would say that.
Yeah, you might be right. But do you think there's something specific to the Green Party that is more welcoming to female candidates?
I do.
Well, I think the Democrats have really championed women's issues a lot, but they've kind of been backtracking on some of that. That's why we need to really seize the opportunity to make sure that we state that unequivocally, when we're running and when we're out in public.
I think that people have to remember when we look at women's issues that it is not just a question of like body autonomy and sexual harassment. Economic issues are women's issues. Issues that relate to, like, what happens when they start laying people off? They lay the women off first because they say, well, you go home first. You go look after your house. It'll be nice for you, dear. Pat, pat, pat. And so when they start attacking the economy, they come after us first. So when there's a party that's halfway decent on social issues the way that the Democrats are, but they're not doing anything for the working poor. Yeah. They're not doing anything for single parents who are usually mothers, not always, but usually. They're not helping out. Like, there was a young woman shot on the border just a couple days ago. Those are women's issues, right? And so as green women, we can say, look, we stand with the minimum wage working woman. We stand with the woman who can't get work, who's forced to look after her kids. We stand with homeless women. Who's standing for them? Are the Democrats standing for them? I don't think so.
No.
And look at healthcare.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't have healthcare and every other wealthy industrialized country in the world has it. Yeah. That is something that hurts women particularly, and we don't have childcare. We don't have, we don't have free parental leave for both parents and, paid for. We don't have, our vacation allotment. It was ridiculous compared to other countries in Europe. And, which reminds me, if you took the policies of the Democratic Party, even what they say, and what they say is a whole lot better than what they do. But even if you just take what they say and you put that into the context of a European country, the Democratic Party would absolutely be a conservative party. It would be more conservative than what they call conservative parties in Europe. And so one of the things that the system does is it doesn't allow, even when Bernie Sanders ran and he was talking about what happened in Denmark, and Hillary Clinton was saying, well, this isn't Denmark or whatever. Well, let's look at the other countries and let's bring that up, as there's absolutely no excuse for us not having health care for absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
England put it in they were devastated after World War II.
Yeah, for sure.
It's outrageous. And Obama came into office in 2008 with 60% in both houses and took single payer off the table. Yeah. So that's how friendly the Democratic Party is to the real concerns of women. And Jill Stein did a pretty good job of pointing that out. Women's feminine, as Sadie is saying, it's like the femininity, the feminine values of not war, not not military solutions and things like that.
Yeah.
I just want to chime in with, I feel like we do talk about women's issues, and it is a women's issue because it's out of balance. We have no balance. We have no voice. When we got the vote 100 years ago, we couldn't even sign papers.
When white women got the vote 100 years ago, Indigenous women didn't get it until like 20 years ago. Never forget that. Carry on.
True. It was actually, you had to be over 30.
Yeah.
And you had to be a householder, which meant you were married to a man with property. So it was very specific. After you got brainwashed, after you were half dead,
Yeah.
after you were submitted to your owner.
Right.
So this is Rachel again in Los Angeles, and something I've been saying on the campaign trail a lot. We're a very industrial area, right? We've got the Port of Long Beach and Port of LA, San Pedro, which is where I live, and it's a whole development paradigm that's very toxic masculinity that we're going to have to overcome. We have to get beyond total industrialization. Someone had mentioned earlier, we're out of balance. And so what I have been campaigning and promoting is more a move towards an agro-industrial, at best, model of development about greening our cities, restoring our environment. Really, and in so many ways, these are more kind of feminine jobs, or and not necessarily women's jobs, but feminine earth-based jobs. And that's what we're going to need, and that's what the planet is screaming out for us to do, is to restore her, and those are just more gentle jobs than extractive industries, which are violent in their nature. Tar sands and fracking and all of that are just only leading to a dead-end industrial society. And if I can really quickly, I want to read, because I do have out our 10 key values that you can get from the internet, and I want to just read feminism. It's just one paragraph, if I may.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, it's our 10 key. It's so beautiful. It's such beautiful language. I really like to promote it. But it talks about just this difference in mindset and philosophy and paradigm. So it says, feminism. We have inherited a social system based on male domination of politics and economics. We call for the replacement of the cultural ethics of domination and control with more cooperative ways of interacting, which respect differences of opinion and gender. Human values such as equity between the sexes, interpersonal responsibility, and honesty must be developed with moral conscience. We should remember that the process that determines our decisions and actions is just as important as achieving the outcome we want. And we were talking about earlier about Trump. He's so monolithic, and it's his way or the highway, and that's this toxic masculinity is that when you have an undemocratic process, you're going to have an undemocratic outcome. And what we're finding is that when you don't have a true and a just outcome, you discontinue the disaster, the problems don't get solved, and everything gets worse. So I think, the time is now to have some real answers, which are more, feminine, restorative, and viable into the future.
Yeah.
That was a great wrap up to that a question about the Green Party, Rachel. Thank you for that. So this is an observation by myself. Ruby Bridges, at the age of 5 years old, was put into the role of desegregating the schools. Malala was also an activist for the schools, another female, strong, powerful female at a very young age. Ahed Tamimi now in Palestine is in prison, a young female activist. Emma Gonzalez spoke out for gun control after the shooting over there in Parkland. Rachel, I saw your daughter speaking for gun control on the internet. Is there, this is a question for all of you, but I'll ask Rachel first, is there a reason why young women, is it a natural thing to be an activist at such a young age? I don't think we see this with young men as much.
Well, I have been a teacher for had a teaching credential for about 30 years, and so I've seen a lot of kids and been around a lot of youth, and generally you do find that girls tend to be more activists. And so what we need to do is we need to honor that and to strengthen that and to continue that and to honor girls in education and in the school, which we don't. We need to strengthen them, especially at the middle school level when you can get so lost in negative behaviors and self kind of negative behaviors. It starts pretty much in middle school. And actually what I'm doing with my campaign is that I've said that I'm going to donate 10% of my salary to programs that help the youth, but that connect youth and the elderly, because elderly people have a lot of loneliness, but they have a lot of wisdom, and youth have a lack of wisdom and they need guidance. And so I'm going to be looking into doing that. But I think generally, the earth is crying out for us to, like I said before, have solutions. And so young girls are stepping up. And I'm going to tell you, I was very proud. My daughter spoke at the March for Our Lives rally in Long Beach. And what she spoke about went way beyond gun violence. It was, her message was, we have to cure violent America. Like Sadie said, our economic system is violent. Foreclosing on families is violent. Allowing kids to be crammed into classrooms, 40 deep, 35 kids aren't even paying attention is a violent situation. This is ridiculous. And, and we're here to change it. So.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think that, there's definitely a difference between men's culture and women's culture. And, I think girls have more social conscience that kind of seems to come to the fore more frequently, and it is something that we need to both honor and nurture and support, and that's one of the things that's so terrible. I don't know when we're going to segue into the Me Too movement, but one of the terrible things is that women have and girls have so often been silenced, not believed, not supported, and not given the kind of credence that they deserve. So this is one of the things we have to change. We have to begin to honor it in ourselves and in each other, and we need men to start stepping up and honoring women's culture, because there's some really good psychologists that have written different books. One is Women's Ways of Knowing, and Carol Gilligan's in a different voice that I would highly recommend, because we need to understand that women have a different way of seeing the world, than men do. And it's I think the perspective that's going to save us all. And if we don't start honoring it and we don't start voicing it and claiming it, then, we're all kind of doomed. Because, we've seen what all these years of patriarchy have done. They're taking us to the brink of extinction. So it's time to start honoring the other half of humanity. What was that PBS program that, I don't know if any of you saw it, but Half the Sky was all about this. It was a really good program. I'd highly recommend it. But, all over the world, they're going and trying to help girls and women, become empowered, and looking at how, the global oppression of women, which is just astonishing once you start beginning to understand the extent of it.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess to me, the question in terms of women being more active from a younger age, I think it's just that society it kind of forces us to grow up faster. In the case of Malala, she wasn't allowed to go to school. right?
Mhm.
She wanted to go to school. And I could imagine a little boy in that situation, if he were told, you can't go to school, he might have fought back as well. But boys aren't being told that, girls are. So it's a product of the world that we grow up in, you know, that we're forced to face these things from a younger age. I was talking to a friend recently, and he was saying, well, I don't want my son, who's a 13-year-old boy, to have to realize how violent the world is. And I was thinking, well, when I was 11, I was getting hit on in the streets. You know, I didn't have a choice. I was confronted with it. I would walk home and some guy decided that because my body was maturing, that meant that he could just do whatever he wanted. And so, yeah, I grew up faster, you know. It's just what we've had to go through.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking of a scenario when I was young that I couldn't play sports. I was born just a little bit too early for girls to play with boys. I think it happened like 2-3 years later. And I was extremely athletic and I loved playing and I loved competition. And as soon as they told me I was no longer allowed to play with the boys, I could only play with the girls, I became a star on the team, each team that I was on, because I was good, but there was no competition in there for me. So I pretty much dropped out of sports and became, you know, all kinds of trouble happened after that. But the thing is it wasn't just me that lost. It was all the teams I couldn't join that also lost. So that's what I mean about it is a women's issue and we do need balance. But it's not just for our benefit. It's actually for the benefit
For everyone's
of everyone.
That's true. And sports are still segregated and we still only watch, you know, the male teams. We still hear nothing at all about the women's teams.
All the money is in the male teams, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
All the attention.
The U.S. soccer team, the women, right? Do you remember this? About 2-3 years ago, they actually won the World Cup.
They did.
In soccer, and nobody in the United States heard about it. It was on.
Yeah.
It was like, I think Democracy Now! Showed it. That was it.
There were like little tweets and stuff like, they were heroes and now they're going back to being wives and mothers and daughters and sisters. And it's just like, okay, so we only exist in relation to other people. I've never seen anything about a man's sports team that's like, now they're going back and they're going to go back to being fathers and sons and husbands. You never hear that. I don't know why you never hear that.
But the truth is that if we have an even shot to the audience, people will watch women's sports.
That's right.
It's a total bias inside the system of the, you know, the patriarchal media system.
That's right.
You know,
Well, in the patriarchal economic system, I mean,
That's
capitalism is violent. They say also during sporting events, especially the Super Bowl, domestic violence goes up around the country.
Oh,
That's
God. Wow.
There's a whole kind of
I just heard that the sex trafficking syndicates follow sporting events.
Oh, crap.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
Isn't that horrible?
I hope everyone watching this is having a stiff drink right about now.
Maybe we should all have one.
Turning off ESPN.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
If you didn't already have reason to boycott the NFL.
Yeah, there's several reasons.
There are plenty of reasons. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, so you talked about when we were going to transition to the Me Too movement. I want to do it this way, is in our county, there's a vote now to recall Judge Aaron Persky. The Judge Persky had judged over Brock Turner. Brock Turner was convicted of sexually assaulting a woman who was unconscious. Now he was convicted, and the minimum sentence was 2 years. Judge Persky overrode.
And the maximum, I believe, was 14 that he could have gotten. He could have gotten up to 14 years, I believe.
Was it 14? Wow. Okay, it might have been 14. So, yeah. I thought I'd even heard 20, but he ignored the minimum, and he gave him 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. of course, he did have to register as a sex offender. So there's a movement now to recall him, and it's not just for this one case, but he's had several cases where he has favored not just men, but athletes specifically,
Wow.
men in general.
Oh, yeah, he's so worried about what's going to happen to the athlete's future.
Absolutely, and this also goes to the point of economic equality, is that these were wealthy people, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead and move into the Me Too movement. I don't know if you guys have read about this case or aware of this case, if whoever wants to talk about it or any part of the Me Too movement.
Yeah, I definitely heard about it months ago and read about it, and it's an absolutely outrageous example of judicial indifference to women's suffering. And he overrode, as I recall, the jury wanted to give him, was it a jury trial? Oh, no,
It was a jury trial, yes.
Yeah, and I believe they wanted to give him a much stiffer sentence, but the judge, commuted his sentence down to this ridiculous 6 months in jail, and he got out in 3.
Right. Yeah, that's what it opened the door to, was that he could get out on good behavior, and he
3 months is all he for raping this poor young woman and leaving her in like a piece of trash out in the alley or wherever it was.
And all of
that's
those
just ridiculous. Go on.
create this hostile environment, and then it shows up in the difficulties that you have in recruiting women to run for office. I mean, it's all pervasive. It affects what we are willing to try for in our work, in our jobs. It affects whether we speak out. All of this hostility and this it's like, I think rather than the fair sex, we're fair game.
Right.
Well said.
It all has an effect, and it has an effect in the world, because the world needs, as we've been talking, it needs women who are close to birth and death and the earth, that we know it, and in our bones, because we spend our time with those kinds of things. But it's so Me Too. It's really great, in my view, that is coming out and that people are coming forward. To link it only to Donald Trump, I think, is a very big problem.
Oh, yes, definitely.
That it's much, much bigger than Donald Trump.
Oh, yes.
And it seems to me that the two-party system, which is a huge problem, one party would just love to have it all be anti-Trump. Why didn't it come out before Trump was president?
Right.
All of this stuff. I mean, the thing that happened with Brock was a few years ago.
That's right.
And so, it's a mistake to think that the Democrats are on the right side and the Trump is on the wrong side there.
Absolutely.
Ridiculous.
Oh,
I want to tack on to what you said there, because so I'm a dual national. I'm also part British, and not that you can tell by my voice, but in the UK, they had their first British woman prime minister about 30 odd years ago. That was Margaret Thatcher, right?
Yes.
And so she's famous for having decimated trade unions, destroyed entire communities, and taken milk away from school children. And that is the legacy of the first woman prime minister.
Yeah.
So this whole idea, what you're saying, Laura, is like this idea that basically it all comes down to, there's a guy who's kind of pro-rape culture in the White House, and if we just elected the woman, there wouldn't be any problems.
Yeah.
That's all BS.
Yeah.
That narrative needs to go away, because we would have another Margaret Thatcher situation.
Right.
It's not just about getting one woman into power and then all of a sudden all the men wake up and go, oh, women are capable of being powerful, maybe I shouldn't rape them. That's not what happens.
Right.
And they've said something like the critical mass is something like 30%. If you have a legislature and you have something like 30%, then women they don't have to play the boys' game. They don't have to play the man's game.
Right.
Then
Mhm.
there's more ability to be a woman, to talk like a woman, to think, to propose like a woman. But I don't know what we're at. I know
Well,
I remember.
I can tell you in the assembly, there's 80 members in the California State Assembly, and only 16 of those are women. And
Wow.
that's an unbelievably, small number.
And this is California, that's been Democratic Party for, that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
solid Democratic Party.
it's terrible.
I was going to say something about the Me Too movement because I actually have that in my past as well. And it originally started with women just telling their story,
Yes.
saying, I was sexually abused as a child. I was actually sex trafficked when I was a teenager. I didn't even know it was sex trafficking until I saw a program on sex trafficking. It was a brief period of my early teens, and I look back, I always kept it a dark secret, and I looked at it like, oh, I hope nobody finds out. I had no idea. I had a boyfriend that was connected to the mob. He took me 2,000 miles away from home. Him and a hotel owner was raking in a lot of money and forcing me to do things I didn't want to do. And I didn't even know that it wasn't my fault, right?
Yes.
Right.
I was 13 years old. I didn't know it wasn't my fault. So I think that the Me Too movement is just women reaching out to other women and saying, this has happened to a lot of us. Don't be ashamed. Don't take it on yourself. And I think this is what we have done throughout the last several centuries, millenniums, as we have been used as cattle, as sex slaves, as general slaves, that we're just coming out of that period. So that we're speaking up and saying, oh, this happened to me, is actually the miracle, I think, that elections, politicians, nothing can stop this miracle of women finally speaking up and speaking to each other about it and supporting each other.
What happened was, if you remember, it was the Cosby case that really brought this out, because so many women, it was like just one after the next, after the next, after the next, till it was over 50 women, came forward, about him. And that was what really broke through, this shroud of silence, that has been operating forever. And, but it took that many women, and even still, a lot of these people still don't believe the women, even though, this is one of the things that is so outrageous, is how, women are not believed, and I had a couple of young guys mention to me. I was down at a demonstration down in LA a few months ago, and this was when the whole Cosby thing was really hitting, and they were saying, well, how come, these women, I really think that, they should have come out a lot sooner and said something, because then they would have prevented all these other women, getting treated this way, getting raped or assaulted or whatever. And I said, you know what? No, it wouldn't have. If they weren't believed, it wouldn't have prevented anything.
Yeah.
This is what people need to understand, is that, the critical mass that has to come forward, it is huge in this, with this issue. Otherwise, they just say, oh yeah, she's just trying to get money, or she just wants notoriety. I mean, whatever crazy thing people come up with. but it has to be, it had to be this huge number. And then of course the Harvey Weinstein case, where it's over 100 now, women.
Wow.
But there's still people that will question it and say, oh, well, I think Bill Cosby, I don't believe that. And I mean, his wife being one of them, and a lot of other people. But it's really astonishing how, like if it were reversed, it would only take, one or two guys to come up with something,
right?
And they would be believed. They would be automatically believed.
Right.
And I think also, this is Rachel. I think it's important also, those of us with a deeper, Green Party, deeper economic and social analysis, we really need to be, I think, helping the Me Too movement kind of make a larger social analysis, in that women are disempowered in this economy and in this society. Yes. Like I was saying before, housing insecurity, family insecurity, safety insecurity. When you have kids going to school and they're not getting the education they think that they deserve. When we're having to, and someone mentioned the short time we have off after we give birth. A lot of societies, they have a year. And I'll never forget when my daughter was little and I was dropping her off one day to the nursery school, and I had to go to work, and it turned out not to be a great nursery school either. So that's very painful to do before you can get out of it. And there was another woman dropping off her baby, and we locked eyes, and the look of desperation in this woman's face of like, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be leaving my baby with strangers. Like, this is crazy. And Michael, we had this interview before, and I had said about the Me Too movement. I mean, women are strong. We can freaking defend ourselves and be empowered. We don't need people holding our hands, but we have a totally disempowering society and an economy. If we were marching into work and knew that we had just had a year with our babies and we had health care and secure housing, and no one was going to beat us up when we got home, and when we went home, like we weren't in any danger on the way home. Like, you know what I mean? We'd be kicking ass. But none of our values, because we live in this misogynist, capitalist economy, and it's like I mentioned before, it's just violent. So we need to empower women in general, and then we can handle it ourselves.
Well, it's almost like the system that the corporate state, whatever you want to call it, is actually manufacturing
dependence, manufacturing
vulnerability. Right. They're manufacturing vulnerability, vulnerable women, vulnerable children. Yeah.
Engineered vulnerability.
Engineered vulnerability. Very well said.
So one thing, this is an observation. I think that, for instance, women in the workplace who have been sexually assaulted or harassed, they have to worry about feeding their families.
Yeah.
And I think they're stigmatized if they come out and say, hey, I'm being harassed by a boss or by a coworker, and it prevents them from excelling in their careers. That even if they win, for instance, the case against the person, they're still stigmatized going forward as somebody who complains about harassment.
Right.
Definitely.
Or undocumented workers can't even call the cops if they're raped. Yeah. So it's another intersectional angle that we need to be focusing on. We talk about, that's why when we talk about undocumented populations, that's another women's issue, because I heard a story that was basically that the woman who worked in a hotel as a cleaning lady, and she was undocumented, and straight up her boss just raped her, and she said, I'm going to call the cops. And they said,
this happens a lot.
Yeah. He laughs at her and says, what, then they're just going to deport you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's just
women are being raped in the fields, Yes,
definitely. Carol, you are in the healthcare industry, and you talked about healthcare being a woman's issue. What have you heard as far as the Me Too movement in, you do family therapy? Is that what you do?
Well, yeah, I haven't been seeing clients for a while, but one of my specialties is women's issues, and I've worked with a lot of women who have been abused and sexually abused, as abused as children, and that's one of the things that we need to talk about too. Is how damaging this stuff is. I mean, people don't really get it, how devastating sexual abuse is. It affects a person's ability to connect with other people, to trust anyone, to really trust their reality in some respects. It is very devastating to a person's ability to sustain relationships. It's so damaging to one's self-esteem and to your ability to function. And it is like you were saying, Bridget. It's such a reflexive thing for women and girls to blame themselves. This is a real problem. I mean, and especially when they aren't believed. Again, it's so important that people who are victimized are believed and given support. And one of the most important things psychologically and emotionally is for someone to believe you and unequivocally and be on your side, not be trying to rush you into forgiveness too early, and all these kinds of things that a lot of times are, getting over it and that kind of thing, which our society tends to do in general with people who are suffering from all kinds of psychological trauma. But the issue of being believed is just, I cannot emphasize that enough. That's why it's so wonderful with the Me Too movement, seeing that finally, women are being heard and they're being believed finally, because that's one of the most healing things that there is, as well as connecting with other people who have had similar experiences. Women supporting one another and coming forward and telling their stories is just phenomenal. It's just so wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Bridget, I thank you for sharing your story as well. I know that's hard to do, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's power. There's a lot of power in it. I started by watching other women do it, and that empowers other women to do it. It's a chain reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have those stories. I mean, there's to one kind of situation or another. We've all either been raped, been sexually harassed. I mean, it's so common. It's just more common than not. And it's kind of a logical extension of patriarchy, I'm afraid.
Totally.
Before the hashtag Me Too, there was the hashtag Yes All Women.
Yes, exactly.
Which was a hashtag in response to another hashtag, which was hashtag Not All Men, that was mocking there's a tendency amongst certain guys that when you say, look, I've been kind of scared of men, I'll go on a first date, I'm not sure what's going to happen, I want it to be, just kind of basic aspects of what it means to be a woman. And they'll go, well, not all men are going to do that. So it's like, well, not all men, but yes, all women have experienced it.
Yes,
And if your
exactly.
first reaction to learning about it is to get defensive and say, well, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But why are you making it about you? Because I didn't make it about you. You made it about you. And that tells me there's something going on back there.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what, decades ago, we didn't have a name for it. I remember I had a horrible time experience in high school with being harassed. And, there was nothing we could do about that then. We had no way of even naming it. Nobody recognized it as even a problem. It was that whole crazy idea about boys will be boys, and whatever you do as a female, doesn't matter what you do, everything's always your fault.
Right.
And it's just unbelievable, really. So it's great. It's so wonderful to see this coming out. I just
thank God for social media.
Going
Right?
much further than it has.
So those are the questions I have. Is there anything you guys would like to cover that I haven't covered so far?
We could do closing remarks or something.
Yeah, well, certainly we should probably get everybody's information as far as their websites and how people can contribute to their campaigns. Whoever wants to start.
Well, you can see mine up here, I think, on my little banner. I don't know if you can see it or not. It looks backwards to me, but yeah, mine looks backwards. Yours doesn't. Everybody else's signs look fine, but mine looks
backward to
weird.
me.
Actually, on your screen, it comes out backwards.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It would
Yeah.
be, of course,
That's
yeah.
the mirror
So
image.
you can see my little, I think I have my website on there, CA Bolden for 8042.org.
Yeah, CA Bolden at
Yeah,
8042.org. Yes,
yeah, for 8042.org.
excellent. And then we could people can contribute from there and then sign up to volunteer.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then
And
how about
this-
you, Rachel? Do you want to give your website and everything?
So my website is Rachel for the number 4, rachelforassembly.org, and my platform's up there, and you can donate there and volunteer. I got lawn signs. We just did. This is my closing remark. We just did a big anti-war rally at the USS Iowa on Memorial Day, and the issues of war and peace, and the Green Party is just so strong on this. Issues of war and peace, are very feminine issues. So we need to really be promoting peace and a peace economy, and using that towards women and family and community needs. So
Right.
onward to Tuesday, June 5th.
Excellent. Yes. And how about you, Bridget?
I do have a Facebook page now, elect Bridget Duffy. I don't have too much other than that. I don't take donations. I'm just sort of putting myself out there. I do a newsletter and I pass it around, and I'm hoping that other people pass it around. I'm discovering a lot of stuff as I take this journey, and I'm trying to expose a lot of corruption that I'm finding in the San Mateo County law enforcement community, actually. And so I'll be putting that on my Facebook page, and hopefully exposing as much of it as I can.
So
While I'm in this
just real
process.
briefly, is the current sheriff was appointed and was caught up in a human trafficking brothel sting by the FBI.
That's right. That's right. The current sheriff
He's
who's
dead.
seeking re-election is
Damn. Oh my God. In jail.
was apprehended by the FBI in Las Vegas at a sex trafficking situation. There was no signs or anything, and there was an underage teenage girl present, and he still was appointed as sheriff after that fact.
Wow.
So the supervisor that appointed him is also running for re-election. The DA is running unopposed. knows the whole thing and has covered it up. And the news media here in San Mateo County refuses to print one word of truth about it. And I'm working with some people. Even if he does get elected, we're going to try to recall him. So stuff is coming out, and people are getting involved. And so it's, you know, I wouldn't have even known about it if I wasn't running for a state assembly.
Wow.
I just found out about it on my path. And then once I found out about it, I put a sign on my back at the Women's March. And it was like somebody saw the sign, I think. And the next thing, there was a petition. And now there's a bunch of people that are sending things around. So, you know, it's amazing what just a little bit of effort on our part can do to help expose some of the corruption and stuff that's going on.
That's great.
I'm proud of us.
And I know you've done a lot of work for it too, so I appreciate it. I think we all do. How about you, Lori? Do you have a website and how people can contribute and help your campaign?
Yeah, well, I'll hold up my little card here that shows people where the how to write in Laura Wells, but my website is myname.org. So LauraWells.org, and that is my campaign website. So yeah, and so anybody in Alameda County, pretty much the big cities in Alameda County are in the district. LauraWells.org.
What district is that, Laura?
It's Congress District 13. So U.S. Representative District 13. It's Barbara Lee's district.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And she's, as I said before, she's running unopposed on the June ballot, and so the write-in candidate who gets the most votes will be on the November ballot. And the ones that are running are a Republican, American Independent Party, you know, George Wallace's party.
Yeah, George Wallace's party.
A libertarian, and a no party preference. And I think we have a shot.
Yeah.
Excellent. And how about you, Sadie?
Yeah. So my campaign happened very last second. We've got a Facebook page. It's just, if you go to facebook.com/Sadie4, F-O-R, AD4. It rhymes. Sadie for AD4. And so, yeah, you can look that up there. I have a Twitter, which is just Sadie F. I've had that for ages. It's my personal Twitter, but I'm using it for the campaign. Yeah, and then in terms of website, donations, etc., that'll all come later. Mercifully, it's free to run as a write-in. I haven't even thought of fundraising for myself yet. I've been too busy focusing on the gubernatorial campaign.
Yeah.
But
and you're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that. In terms of concluding remarks, I did want to say this. There is a little sort of sideways look at history that you very rarely hear that I want people to understand, and that is this. In Russia, in 1917, after there was a People's Revolution, regardless of what you think of what happened after, Leon Trotsky said you could measure the decline of that revolution by how the women were treated.
Yes.
Immediately after 1917, there was divorce on demand. There was abortion on demand. This is in Russia in 1917. There were creches, there were laundries, there was maternity leave. In early 1920s, they rolled all that back. They got rid of all of it right around the same time of the exile. So, of course, regardless of what you think of Leon Trotsky, that's not the issue with discussion here. It is a barometer of the success and the egalitarian nature of a society, how the women are treated and how we are supported.
Yes.
And can I say one thing about that, Sadie? I was just talking about this incident, this situation 100 years ago. Today is that at the time that they were doing that in Russia, we sent President Wilson sent over 8,000 troops to overthrow that. So I think that's what we've been doing around the world. I've been going to Cuba for 20 years. They have the Federation of Cuban Women. They passed their ERA in the mid 70s. It's an absolutely feminist revolution down there that we've been trying to overthrow for the past 55, 60 years. So,
And the suffragists were fighting for the right, for women's right to vote at that same time. And Woodrow Wilson was, he was very opposed to that. So, but we finally got it in 1920. But wow, yeah, what a difference.
Well, I thank you all for being here. I'm humbled by how strong and intelligent and great candidates you are. And I thank you guys all for running for the Green Party. And I think you're great.
Thank you for making this panel
Thank
happen,
you,
Mike.
Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and all of you.
We need allies.
Yeah,
We do.
awesome. Okay, guys. Well, you have a good night, and thank you for being here.
and
Yeah,
good luck
yeah,
to everybody
yeah.
on Tuesday.
Yeah, good luck
Yeah,
on
get
Tuesday,
out the vote.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.